Ask me questions. So, you ready?
Okay, my name, okay, you introduce me?
This is the Rocky Flats Cold War Museum Oral History Project. My name is Hannah Nordhaus and I'm interviewing Bob Brady. We're at his house in Arvada and it is the 20th of October, 2004. So Bob, just to get started, why don't you tell me a little bit about your background, where you were born, where you grew up, what your parents did, where you went to school, that sort of thing.
Well, I was born in Denver, Colorado in 1925. And I attended schools locally. I went to like Mariah Mitchell, Cole, Manual High School, all the lower East Denver market. Went to school there, graduated from high school, and that was the end of my education as far as, because I went into service after that.
So you graduated from high school then in
43.
And so were you in World War II then?
Yes.
And where were you stationed?
We was mostly stationed in the South Pacific. We took training at Camp Hood, Texas, shipped out of Seattle over Puget Sound, went over to Hawaiian Islands for amphibious and jungle training, and then we went, invaded the Philippines, then we invaded Okinawa, and after Okinawa we was scheduled to invade Honshu, and while we was doing that, the bomb went off, ended the war. So that saved many lives, probably saved my life, both sides.
Honshu, was that in Japan? Or that was in
Okinawa was as far as they got.
Okay.
Then they disbanded our...
So were you a Marine then?
Was I what?
A Marine? Or?
I was in the infantry.
Oh, okay.
A gravel jockey.
All right. Okay, so then you came back from the war, and what next?
Well, I come back from the war. Oh boy, that's tough. I went to work for the Frontier Airlines in their tool crib. And then while I was working there, I met my wife, Barbara, who was a bunch of people we run around with. It was a group. She was one of them. And we kind of hit it off pretty good. And we stayed together. Then we got married in 1947. So we just celebrated our 57th anniversary this 16th of this month. And we're going to go on a trip to Florida the end of this month to celebrate. Our daughter lives there. So then I was a bleacher and a dyer at a textile mill. Then I went on the Denver Police Department. I didn't make enough money there to do anything. I couldn't buy a house. So I read in the paper, the Rocky Flats, government's going to build a $13 million plant in Colorado. So I thought, oh, that's pretty good. So I went down and investigated with the employment agency, and they gave me a referral to go to Rocky Flat for a job interview. Well, I went for a job interview, and I got a job as a security guard, because that's probably all that was open at that time. And that started at the AA building down on 13th and Glenarm. About 2 months later, I moved out to the plant site. It was quite a drive. It was a pretty unknown place. And when I got out there, mostly I worked the gate, letting people in and checking them in. People come for jobs, and the construction people come for job interviews. And they had a construction person in the office there, and then mostly we checked cars in and out and in and out. So met a lot of the people I worked with while I was doing that eventually got jobs and came in there.
So were there any buildings there at that point?
They were building like the administration buildings, and they were building the construction buildings. Some of the construction buildings were being built, but they weren't complete. Mm-hmm. So I stayed on the plant security force till 1953. Then I went into building 881, they called it 81 in them days, as a process operator, which was a big advancement from the security to moving into production. And we did enriched uranium in that building at that time. And we recycled mostly some of the parts that they made and the solutions, and we do precipitations, fluoridizations, convert the metal stuff back to metal through a reduction process. See,
So what was your official job title there?
I was a process operator.
So you were in the glove box, working with.
Yeah. Some of it was good. Most of it was hoods in them days with airflow sucking in. We had only hoods in where we had inert product that would catch fire, so we had to keep it inert in there. This was enriched uranium, you know, and we did a lot of soxhlet washers, degreasing of stuff. We used a soxhlet washer, which fills up with a trichloroethylene, siphons down, and degrease these things so they can be reprocessed in the foundry areas. And it was run by Dow Chemical Company at that time. In my opinion, Dow Chemical was the safest. They were taught safety more than anybody on the plant site. I mean, that I worked for. And I think Dow's safety program carried very much through the people who worked there that made supervisors and carried on Dow's safety practices. They used to have dinner dances, things for awards. And it was an incentive for people to really grasp a hold of safety, which they did. And it paid off because they got they got these little rewards. You know, it was great. Dow Chemical was a great company.
So,
and when they left, they split their fee with everybody there. They did not take any money. They split their fee with the employees.
wow. So everybody got a bonus?
Which they didn't have to. They didn't have to, but they did. It was a good company. They called it Mother Dow. It was just like a family. And you felt like a family.
Then how did Rockwell compare?
Rockwell, I think Rockwell got in there at the time of the big boom in the plant, hiring people, meeting quotas, getting jobs done. You know, and I think they was in there when the plant was in this Cold War race, which I think that the employees did a heck of a good job. I think we did a good job in the Cold War because we outpaced the other nations. We did it cheaper. They couldn't keep up with us. They folded because we did a good job and the people out there did an excellent job. That's my opinion.
Okay, so to go back to when you first started, there's a couple things I wanted to ask you. I have this article here from the Rockwell News about your 30th anniversary. And I'll show it to you later, but one of the things that I saw you talked about the roads, and you said that it was an awful drive to get.
Oh, it was a bad drive. Them roads were rocky. People got flat tires all the time. And you know, tires weren't as good today as they was in the 50s. And people got flat tires. The wind was terrible. 90-mile-an-hour winds. Plywood going off of stacks like a deck of cards dealing out, you know. And we had outhouses. Like, I don't think they were like Santa's. I remember their outhouses. And we'd go out there to go, and the cattle would rub up against them and shake the houses while you were in there. What's happening in there? You know, it was an experience, a great experience. Yeah, you couldn't repeat it.
And none of the roads were paved at that point, or
the paves eventually got. That was only a west entrance. There was not an east entrance in the early days. And the early days, we came in through the Lindsay Ranch Road, which was off farther to the north and came in.
Still off of 93?
Yeah, it was off of 90, down the old Lindsay Ranch was out there.
And 93 wasn't paved either, was it then?
93, yes.
It was paved?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, the wind used to blow us off of the road in the wintertime. The road gets slick and the wind blows so hard, just blow you right off of the road. And you got used to it. We used to have whiteouts you couldn't see. And I remember one time we went to work and we had a big heavy snow here in Denver. I had an old 50 Chevy Power Glide that couldn't spin its wheels on ice. And I picked up the carpool. We drive all the way out to the plant site. The state patrol stops us and sends us home. They says the roads are closed, you can't go in. That was depressing because we drove that car wouldn't spin the wheels on ice. It was so, and so we came back home, and then waited till they give us clearance.
You had mentioned before we turned on the tape about the rattlesnakes.
Oh yeah, I remember one time they dug up on the excavating. They dug up some great big hibernating balls of rattlesnakes, and they were hibernating like in the winter, and they poured gasoline on them, set them on fire.
Did they wake up?
Yeah, they burned up.
Uh-huh.
No, but they didn't. There's still rattlesnakes out there. They didn't get rid of them. But that was a thing you would never see in your life. You'd never see something like that. It was a great place to work. Rocky Flats was great. People were great.
So to go back even a little bit further, I'm wondering what your family did in Denver.
My family?
Yeah, your dad.
My dad was a butcher. Oh, they moved in from Pennsylvania. I was the only one born in Denver. My folks were, and my brother and my two sisters were born in Pennsylvania. He was a coal miner like back there, and he says he's not coal mining, so he came to Colorado and became a butcher, and he was a butcher all of his life.
Oh. So you didn't want to become a butcher?
No, I can't even cut my own meat to eat.
All right. So I wondered. So you mentioned that you interviewed for this $13 million plant that was being built. When did you figure out what exactly they were building?
I just knew it was a nuclear plant of some type. I had no idea what its purpose was. And today, I'm just vague on what its purpose was. I mean, we made triggers. Mm-hmm. Triggers, that's it.
And so you worked in a number of buildings, right?
I worked in almost every production building out there.
And did you learn as time went on a little bit more about what was being made and the process? Did you
Well, you knew that they was making parts, but what they were for, who knew? You cast parts. We cast beryllium, we cast uranium, we cast plutonium in the buildings. What the parts was for, we weren't supposed to know, and I didn't care. I just went out to do my job. What the other people did was their business, not mine.
So after building 81, why don't you tell me more about what buildings you went to from there?
Well, I worked in 81. I worked in 44, 4444 building, which casts uranium, depleted, and beryllium. Mm-hmm. Then I went in to work in 776 building, where we did all our plutonium casting, and I mean, we did our not for casting, but we did our reclamation of the plutonium. Like we dissolved the oxides, precipitate it, fluorinate it, put it back into a reduction back into metal for recycle. Mm-hmm. And then I went in the 76. See, 776 was the building that had the fire. And then in 1965 in building 76, I got one big inhalation of plutonium. And it had a hole in my glove up here. It acted just like a bellows, and I just was covered with plutonium oxide.
Did you knew right away that?
Oh, the alarms all went off in the buildings, and they had alarms if anything happened, and it's too late for me to put my respirator on. And then they took me in and gave me shots in the medical department every day. I'd go in and get what they called DTPA. I heard it was a jazzed up acetic acid, was probably the same thing they used for metal poisoning. And I got that every day. They sent me home and take urine samples, fecal samples, and things like that. Kept real good track of me. And it made me a little sick. It gave me pounding headaches when I got that. Sometimes I have to go home and go right to bed. I just break out in a headache with a cold sweat from that stuff. That's the way it affected me. So but evidently it cleansed my system pretty good. I'm still here.
Are you continuously tested now?
I was, yes. About last year, I got my last physical through the Oak Ridge study station there. They sent us over to what's this lung hospital? Oh,
National Jewish.
National Jewish. They sent us there for look for your lungs and they'll test you, and I guess I'm all right. I've never heard any complaints on it. So their treatment worked because I had a pretty good inhalation of plutonium.
Right, so that must have been scary. Were you?
Was I scared?
Yeah, were you scared?
No, I wasn't really afraid of it. It just kind of ruins your career. You're isolated from working any production in radioactive materials anymore.
Oh, okay.
You know, you're restricted. So it kind of hurts your career in a way.
Because your body burden was too high.
Yeah.
To continue.
It takes a while for it to go off. And eventually I was admitted into some of the buildings under restricted area duties. So I could resume production, and I got into the waste treatment plant, which treated liquid waste and things like that. And we run it through an evaporator to concentrate it, and the concentration would run through a spray dryer that would make it dry. Then you'd box them up and ship them off site. Then eventually I got down to what they call the ponds, which was the place where they stored liquids where they didn't have no place to process it, so they put it in these ponds outside. And so we was trying to get rid of them and isolate. So we'd run them through a unit out there, a clarifier, which would concentrate the solution, and then we would cement it and package that and ship it off site. You know, I was put out of there because for some reason, I don't know. Because I guess I was doing the job, I guess, I don't know. And they put me up in, I was the manager of that plant at that time. They put me up in engineering, which I wasn't an engineer. I never was educated as an engineer, but if they wanted to call me an engineer, great.
So what'd you do there?
Very little. We was mostly setting up things on how to get rid of the waste and package it for the things, you know, for office waste, plant waste and stuff, in not highly contaminated, low level stuff. So I would go around and inspect them, and then we was put on taking charge of looking at the new equipment coming in for the new buildings like 371, 374. We was looking in the field, making sure it was properly covered, making sure that the equipment was there, identifying it, familiarizing yourself with what the equipment was, because you might be using it later, which I did in 374. We was using that equipment. I didn't work 371, the new building, but we did had a big thing they called the vault, the stacker retriever, where they stored their plutonium and things. And it was pretty interesting. We used to put it in exercise and see how it worked. It's kind of interesting to do that kind of. So I did my engineering as far as I know. And then last year out there, I didn't have much to do. I mostly took care of a trailer like full of samples, lab samples, because the labs wanted this trailer. So I went out there and I got rid of these samples. Oh boy, there was a bunch. And eventually I got them all out of there so they could get the trailer. And then I decided I'm going to retire.
They're lab samples of people's urines?
From all over the plant. Everything on the plant site is sampled. Liquids, anything, always sampled. And where it was went to whatever the sample results was. You know, and you process it in 374 building. It was a good place. Very safety. People, you know, as you get more people, you're going to have more chance of an accident. Mm-hmm. You know, and when the plant, see, when Dow was there, it was a small plant. And as it progressed, the plant got bigger, operations got bigger, demands got better. And the more people you get, I think you're going to have more chance of accidents, which they're very low, there are accidents out there. Mm-hmm. I know of 3 people that were seriously bit in. You know, one fell off of a lubricating thing on a heavy equipment, got killed. Another one was a jogger. And another one was, something happened, it blew up, and he splattered him full of chips, and I think it eventually killed him.
Chips, were they like radioactive or just?
Oh yeah, plutonium chips.
So he got big dose.
But as far as the fires know, I didn't know anything about them. That was depressing to come to work that morning and say 76 building burned.
Were you working there then? Or
No, I wasn't working there. I was working up on an arc furnace up in the garage, and we did binary products up there for depleted uranium to make big logs. Then they hack them off, roll them, press parts out of them. And I worked in 83 building, which was a split. They had the enriched uranium on one side, depleted on the other. If you was on the enriched side, you wore a blue uniform. If you was on the depleted, you wore a brown uniform. And we had big salt baths in there, hot, really hot, molten salt, for they heat this uranium up and press the parts out of it, big presses. And I worked with a lot of projects out there, a lot of good people. I mean, we was a mixture of everything from maybe Fort Collins to Colorado Springs of people, you know. And for taking them kind of people, they were good people. It was a good place to work, a safe place to work. They furnished everything you used. If you didn't use the safety equipment, it wasn't their fault, because they furnished your clothes, and you showered every day. You was monitored by a monitor before you went home. You know, it was safe. And as far as being a hazardous place considered by the media and that, I don't believe that. How could that many people survive out there and be a hazardous place? I mean, I think we won the Cold War because of that plant.
Do you, in terms of, it sounds like you worked in so many different places. It sounds like the media had, you know, in addition to thinking it might not be safe for workers, they felt that it was maybe not safe for the environment, and that stuff could get out into communities. In terms of what you experienced there, was that also overwrought? You know, was that?
Well, I say everything was highly filtered with HEPA filters. Mm-hmm. If anything got out into the open, it had to have been some kind of fire or accident. It wasn't during normal operations. Normal operations were safe. Mm-hmm. To the environment, to us. We were environment too. We were just like people, only we were there. And I figure, in my mind, my opinion, it was safe. Mm-hmm. Maybe some of the things that happened was an accident, but normal operations, we were safe. The public was safe. They had air monitors stationed all over the area here, downwind of the plant. And what the results of them, I never heard of anything really drastic happening to this.
When you had your accident, how did that, you said you got a hole in your glove?
Yes, because inner ring was missing. It was like a plastic inner ring that goes in there. Uh-huh. And the glove split right under here. I was pretty heavy up here, and I was working, the thing come out just like a bellows, and it shot me. Wow. Got me. And boy, all the alarms go off.
Feel sort of the air coming up.
Oh, I could feel it. I got, part of me was colored the same as that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I was covered. I went in right away and showered. I went in and just stepped in the shower and washed myself off.
What color was it? The green solution?
It's yellow. Yellow.
It was uranium or plutonium?
Plutonium.
So what happened? So the alarms went off. You raced off to the showers.
Yeah.
And then I assume they scrubbed.
Well, I had to scrub up good, you know, and then get myself decontaminated as best I could. And
that's what they put.
And they monitor. Then they send you up to medical, and then they start these shots in your arms and give you all these samples. You take them 24/7. I was doing 7 days a week on these shots. We had to make a trip to the plant, take my samples in. Then during routine things, they always did your urine samples, everything. You got yearly physicals out there, excellent physicals. They had medical to treat you while you was there. If you had a cold or you felt like you was cold, they would give you medication enough to probably get you to see your own doctor if it got worse. And very, very nice, very nice. They furnished flu shots every year.
So when you, after you were decontaminated, would you set off an alarm with the plutonium, even with the plutonium in your body?
No.
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 And you had...
They'd have to go on the, they put you in body counters, which was a lead-lined room, completely lead-lined. They lay you on a table like, had these probes in there. They put them on your right lung, your left lung, your sternum, and we can count your count. And they kept very good track. I had to do that every time I got the shots and everything. I'd go through that every time. They'd count to see if I was decreasing. It's just like metal poisoning.
So the shots would neutralize the plutonium in your blood or something? Is that what
It's just like they treat heavy metal poisoning.
Huh.
It kind of flushes you out. It makes you go through your urine, most of it, I think.
Huh.
And solubles and the insolubles, I think, went off your fecal. I don't know. I don't know that much about it. I just know what they did to me.
And you said it actually made you sick, so you had radiation.
No, the shots made me sick.
Oh,
the
not
DTPA stuff. Give me
okay.
terrific headaches.
Oh, okay, so
I used to come
shots.
home and just jump in bed.
It was the
I'd come
shots
home from
then.
work and I'd just be clammy, sweaty, and my head would just be pounded. Now, that's the way it affected me. Maybe it didn't affect other people, but it did me.
Okay, so it was the shots and not the plutonium poisoning.
No, plutonium, you didn't know you had it.
Okay.
There's no feeling to it. You don't glow in the dark, and you don't.
So you'd have to have a lot bigger dose to get real radiation.
I don't know the answer to that.
And so you said that it did hurt your career. I assume you.
Well, I was restricted from going into radioactive buildings. I was sent on places like up in 11 building, which was a administration building, you know, doing things like that.
And
Then eventually, like I say, I got back into production buildings. I got to work in 444. I got to work in the garage, which had this arc furnace making the binary program.
But you didn't get to go.
Then
to
I
the
went
real
back
hot
into.
areas.
Then they took me in 881 as a foreman. I was a foreman back in 881, doing mostly beryllium things.
And did you have to? Because you had some sort of additional pay when you worked in the hot areas, right?
Yeah, you got, but under restrictions, I maintained them.
Oh, you did. So you didn't have
Yes,
to take a pay
yes,
cut.
they didn't take no money away from you. No, they treated you pretty good for it.
So when you say it hurt your career, is it more that it?
Well, you
advance?
gain knowledge by learning,
Right.
and my knowledge stopped.
Okay. Got it.
You gain a lot. I mean, I was just a high school graduate, and I wasn't just a worker. I come out there to do my work. That was my whole purpose. I had to do what I'm supposed to do, and do it. I did. That's what was my goal out there. I mean, get as good a job as you can, because comes retirement, you want to have the best retirement you can get. You know, that's important. You don't realize it until after you retire.
And you're retired for 15 years now, right?
Yeah. I retired in '88, so.
Yeah.
And you don't get no increases, you don't get no decreases, but it's a good place. I wouldn't trade my job at Rocky Flats for any other job.
So, was there more career advancement opportunity then in the hot areas, do you think, than in other areas?
Oh, I was production oriented. Let's say I was production oriented, and I just felt like my career ended.
Personally, you liked being part of.
My own personal feelings.
Yeah.
I felt like it went kaput.
You liked being part of the process of making
But
something.
maybe it didn't. Maybe I was just feeling that way. And there's other opportunities that you can go to, and I maintained my same title as I was. I maintained the same pay as I was, and which was a good treatment.
I imagine there's also a lot of camaraderie when you're working in the glove boxes, and so you have to. Were you sad to have to leave your?
Oh, it's you got to watch. You don't go fast. The stuff isn't really heavy. It's not a heavy job.
Yeah.
You know, you're not handling that much material in a glove box, and but you have to watch. You had little Magna Healy gauges on the boxes, which told you had a negative pressure in the box. because the exhaust system was working. If it got low, you changed your filters inside to make the glove box have more capacity back to normal. And if you got down below a certain mark on the Magna-Healy gauge, you took it, or you had them look into it. And that is the way you kept a negative pressure in there. So if you did get something wrong, it would suck in and sit it out. But when mine happened, it just came out like a bellows.
It happened so fast.
Yeah, this wasn't enough vacuum to overcome the bellows action that I had through my pumping the gloves with my arm, you know.
Well, now you said you worked at all these different buildings. I'm wondering if there was one that you liked working in the best, and sort of if you could describe the different cultures of the different buildings.
Well, you know, I went in later, even after my restriction, I went into 771 building, which I say is the most hazardous building. It wasn't. It was, I went into there, even with my restriction, I could work in there. Huh. And I went in as I was a foreman in that building. And we did processing, like I told you, dissolutions, precipitations, fluoridizations, and reduction back to metal. And everybody did their job. It was a good job, good place. You know, we didn't stop and say, are we working in a hazardous building? It's our job, you know. Does a soldier stand out in the field and say, hey, I'm going to get shot today? No. He's going to protect himself. You protect yourself with the safety. Every job out there had a procedure. You followed this procedure to the letter. You didn't variate. You didn't make your own procedure. You followed the procedure. And that helps. Everything had a procedure. The only thing they didn't have a procedure for was, could something happen to you? Did you cut your finger? Could you hurt your hand or something, you know, in something? That's little things that can happen to anybody, any of the carpenters. You know, you don't just happens to any worker. It's a policy of the procedure of the industry.
So one thing I have from this article is you discussed the, you said building 776, they used to transport plutonium using a conveyor belt system that had hanging baskets, and they would put the plutonium in the baskets and then have to run after it, ducking the overhead furnace pipes.
Yeah, you did. It was, yeah, you had buttons on the thing to control this conveyor belt, but there was multiple people working there. And if you could put something in the basket, and somebody else would push the button for some of their work, then you'd have to catch it. And then inside you had all your controls for your furnaces and things like that. And you bump your head once in a while because you boom, 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 you hit your head, and you go down the line, and then but it was just a minor problem. It wasn't a major problem.
And so then, did you have any input? Did workers have any input to say to management, "Hey, this is sort of a stupid system"?
Oh yes, they had safety meetings monthly. They could put their input in. They could write a written procedure for a protest for a grievance if they wanted something. Say that grievance, yes, and it was answered by a committee and resolved the problem. And if you had a problem, you was better off to get it resolved instead of putting it inside you and letting it burn. You know, you're better off to get it out in the open, get it resolved. And this is the way the plant handled it.
And what about innovation? Were you guys able to, you know, not just safety problems, but say this could be done better this way? As workers, did you have a lot of input into helping design those?
Yes, you could put in suggestions, and they would reward you for your suggestions that were implemented. And a lot of this was done by people, you know.
So is that how that line, for instance, got changed in 776?
The what?
You said with the baskets and the bumping the head.
Well, no, that discontinued. No, they didn't resolve that.
Oh, really?
You just couldn't. You had too many people working the lines, and and one controlled the whole line, you know.
So you would actually move down the line to continue working with the basket? Is that how it worked?
Yeah, until you eventually bag stuff out, you know, take it out of the line yourself.
And would you have to switch glove boxes to work on the stuff?
Oh yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes,
So
yes.
you put your hands
Yeah,
in
there
the
were
dark and it would
stations.
move?
Yeah, you'd have to move a little bit. Yeah.
Interesting. So you didn't just, wasn't just one.
Anything you
person.
did in there was a glove box.
Yeah. And it wasn't just one person at one station.
No,
Working on the
there's
same
other people.
thing.
We had a bunch of furnaces in there.
Uh-huh.
You load up these furnaces with your plutonium. Put your casting in there to catch your mold in there to catch them. Then you heat them up. Make your casting. Then you had to move the castings out. You had to move your skulls and clean your crucibles up, and get them out of the lines. You know, and then they send to a place that people recoat them, reuse these as a tantalum. What do you call it? Yeah. Well, it was a tan of a crucible. And then you had to get all this stuff eventually out of the line, see. You had to get the parts out so that they go on down to the other places, and they run them through a thermocycle, run them through a machining, and then on into reprocessing for the reclaimed metal. And what the parts was, we had no idea what they're for. We had no idea. I didn't care. I just, like I said, I went out there to do my job. What it was for other people, I have no idea.
Were you in the union?
I was early days, yes.
And did
I think
you,
in 1953 I went into the union.
And then when did you? And then you became a foreman. So then you were.
Yeah, then I became a foreman out of the union. When I went into 881 and doing that uranium process, after I went through the binary product, I went into 881 as a foreman, and then from there on out, I was in supervision.
Okay, so did you feel that the union had much importance or impact?
Very much, very much.
And what was the effect?
Well, I think the union got some benefits. I think they kept the wages in right proportion for the jobs. And I think they watched a lot on the safety issues too. You know, people would probably complain to the union unity, and they settled grievances by committees. The company committee, the union committee would sit down and resolve all their grievances they had. And I think it helped to get these things resolved, get them out of the way. People don't burn up and say, I'm mad at you because you do this, or I'm mad about this. You got it resolved, got it out of the way. Forget about it. You got an answer, you know.
As a foreman, did you have any frustrations working with the union as well?
No, I had no problems at all. A lot of people I was in the union with, and no, I had no problems with the union. I don't know whether they had problems with me or not. I can't answer that, but truthfully.
What was it like to be in such high security? You had mentioned in this article that when you first got there, you had to have a different badge for every building.
Yeah, you couldn't even go into a different room.
Mm-hmm.
You couldn't even go into the next room next to you.
Really?
You had to have a different badge for that building. That was when that's when they first started. The security was really tight, internal and external.
Uh-huh.
Internally in the building, it was tight. You couldn't. And the funny thing was, when you wanted to smoke, you went to a smoke area out in the hall on a bench, and the women had to go to a lounge and smoke. They couldn't smoke in the office or an area. They had to go to their lounge before they could smoke. And if you didn't smoke, you didn't get much of a break. So you put a cigarette in your hand, sit out on the smoke bench, and pretty soon you're smoking. You know? And pretty soon you're sicker than a dog and you quit. That's what I did. But things changed over the plant as the women came in. They were treated the same as the male employees. If they had the same job, they got the same pay. There was no. You went through a progression program to get to the operator top, and they were treated right. They were good. They were good workers. A lot of the women were good workers.
Jim, I've heard some stories that's one of the big issues in integrating women into the production workforce was sort of showers, clothing, that sort of thing.
Yeah, they weren't set up for them. They were set up mostly for male, because
Right.
you had to wear all their clothes. I mean, shorts, socks, complete, hats. You had to wear all their clothes every place you worked in the production areas. They furnished everything, boys. My wife said it saved a lot on clothes.
And so the women would just have to wear the men's clothes at first?
No, wore the same coveralls.
Yeah.
We always wore the same coveralls, men, women. Wore the same clothes.
I wonder if you could describe for me, you know, a typical day at work. Sort of, you came in the carpool, and then sort of what
Well, I lived way out south then, out on South Hudson Street, and it was quite a drive out to Rocky Flats. And we'd pick up the carpool, which most of them now have passed away. I think every one of them I rode with passed away now. And we'd drive to work, chat along, joke, what normally people do in cars. Then you get out to the gate, you all show your badges as you go in through the gate. And then park your car at a parking lot. People go to their own buildings. And you showed your badge to get in there. And then you go in, change clothes, get your work clothes on, get ready to go work, put your badge on, put your dosimetry badges on, go into work, start to work, do your job.
And then at the end of the day?
At the end of the day, you get out of the area, the monitor monitors you. Okay, you come out, your clothes are clean, you're clean. Okay, you go in, you put your clothes in the laundry baskets, take you a good, nice warm shower, put on your own clothes, the monitor checks you again. Make sure you go out the gate, they have alarms on there that nothing can go out that don't belong going out. Pick up your carpool, go home.
And well, I guess you had, with all the security, especially when you first got there, I imagine you couldn't talk to Barbara much about.
I still don't.
Yeah.
She probably learns more now than she ever did.
And was that hard sometimes not to be able to come home from work
No,
and talk about what
no,
you
I was oriented that way, and I just put it out of my mind. Like I say, when I retired, I practically put the plant out of my mind. I knew I worked there, but I just put it off of my mind.
What about your kids? Were they ever curious about?
Kids?
Yeah.
No, we had 9 of them.
You had 9 kids?
7 girls and 2 boys.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So they're probably too busy being 9 kids to.
Probably my oldest boy was probably the most curious because he was educated up at School of Mines and things like that, and but he never did ask me anything about it.
Huh.
He would read articles in the paper and stuff like that, and I just didn't discuss it with him. It wasn't his business.
So you could just tell them you worked at a nuclear weapons plant?
That's all I did. People didn't know where Rocky Flats was. They thought it was the arsenal.
Huh.
He said, "Where do you work?" I said, "Rocky Flats." "Oh, that's out the arsenal." Fine. That's all I would say.
Do you, let's see. What's that other question? Oh, so I'm wondering, in terms of like your neighbors, what was it like during the time when there began to be a lot of protests against Rocky Flats? Did you ever feel uncomfortable or?
The neighbors?
Yeah, or just just people who didn't.
Well, if they did, they didn't really say anything. We had one neighbor that complained about me working at Rocky Flats.
Oh yeah.
And when I told her that her husband worked out at the, what's the name of that place?
Federal Center.
Huh? The Federal Center. They had a reactor underwater out there. He was working around it too. She shut up.
How did you feel about the protests?
The what?
The protests.
I never did get involved with any protesters. And I think you're going to have that in the numbers of anything, the drum beaters and things like that. And I think they're looking for themselves. They were looking for, what do you call it? Tooting their own horn or beating their own drum. I don't think the plant, they was justified in doing that to a plant. I really don't. I never met any of them. I never encountered them. And, because I went to work pretty early in the morning. They weren't up till I went to work at 6 o'clock in the morning, and they weren't up that early.
Did you feel in general that the protests were bad for the?
It was bad for the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it'd give it a real bad place in the country here. You know, the location of it, I think, is what really the community built up so much around the plant from the time that it was made, and then the community wanted to change it. You know, which I imagine eventually they did.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what caused the plant to shut down. Things were getting old, material was getting outdated, protesters, things. I think it just all come together. I don't know about the raid because I wasn't there.
Well, how did you feel when you learned that production was going to stop for good and the plant was going to go away?
The plant what?
Was going to go away.
Well, I think it was ended when I retired in '88. I think production had ceased because of unknown to me why. I don't know. And I think it was time for me to go too, because I was production oriented. I was at, and it just quit. And so I just quit, and I took my retirement and left. But I think the plant as a whole was well worth being there. Not just for my own personal thing, but for the world. I think it did its job. I think it saved my life. When the bomb went off over in Japan, when I was ready to invade Honshu, and we didn't, it saved many lives, both sides. I think it did good for the world. People don't agree with me that the plant was safe. I worked there 37 years, had an incident of plutonium, and I still think the plant was a great place to work. I really do. Good people, you know. I don't relate any bad parts to the plant.
Do you think it should still be there? Do you think it was a good thing that it shut down when it did? Or do you...
Well, that's hard for to think. I could only give you my opinion. Mm-hmm. Like I said, I think the community built up too much around the plant. And I think the people were scared by something, I don't know what. Something in there said that. And I think it's probably good that the plant shut down and moved to another location with new equipment, new things, you know. I think it served its purpose well, and I think its purpose was over with by that time.
So what do you think about the cleanup and plans?
I don't know. I just read what I read in the paper. We get a newsletter once in a while through the thing, and I think it's going along real good from what I understand. I just read in the paper where the vault, which I called the stacker retriever, was so contaminated they couldn't explode anything in it, so they have to decontaminate other ways and tear it down, you know. And you know, it's like trying to clean up dust out of a barn, you know. You can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't taste it. You can only have an instrument to detect it.
Do you, I guess, as someone who has had an exposure, do you feel that you have been taken good care of, and if you had gotten sick that you would have been taken good care of?
I thought I got good care.
Yeah.
You know, I thought they did nobody knew. I think I was kind of a guinea pig. I think they really didn't really surmise that. I think they did what they thought, and I think they was on the right track. I think I'm a living example of it. I have no injuries from it. Not that I know of. And they gave me physicals every year through this, Rocky Flats had them, and then they first this Oak Ridge study took care of, ORISE took care of them. They give you physicals, thorough physicals, not just tapping your knee and saying, hey, your leg moved. You know, it was a real thorough physical. They sent you to the National Jewish to do these things. Mm-hmm. And they couldn't have done any more for me. You know, they did what was expected, and they did a good job of it.
How did you feel about working in a plant that produced a key part of nuclear weapons?
Well, like I told you, I figure that bomb saved my life. And if we can save many more lives by that plant, I think you could. I think it has avoided a war by being the Cold War. And I think we won the Cold War through production. We did it faster, we did it cheaper than other countries can do, and the people that tried to keep up with us folded. Because of this, I think Rocky Flats workers did an excellent job of producing what they were producing.
So what were the best things about working there?
Best things?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I don't know, people. Getting up in the morning, going to work, attitude, having a job, keeping busy, doing your job. So it's a great feeling to do your job and feel you've accomplished something for the. Even day by day, you feel like you've accomplished your job. You meet nice people. You have good workers. It's just a wonderful place to work. As far as safety, you couldn't be any safer.
What about the worst things about working there?
The what?
The worst things about working at Rocky Flats?
The worst things?
Yeah.
Oh, probably the worst things was hearing about the fires. Hearing about the fires, reading things that you didn't agree to in the paper, and things like working there. As far as bad things, there were too many bad things that I occurred. Like I said, I enjoyed working there. I didn't stay 37 years because I didn't like the place. Me personally, I'm just giving you my opinion. Maybe other people got other opinions, but my opinion, it was a great place.
And so you said that you were not involved with any of the fires. You just sort of heard about them second.
No, I wasn't involved in. I did some cleanup on some of the fires.
And what was that like?
Oh, all full pressure suits, supplied air. Go in and decontaminate, just scrub down for 8 hours. Under supplied air, you had a big pressure suit and a full face with air piped into you. And you'd just clean up like you're scrubbing your walls or something. Then monitors check it. Took a long time. That was in '76 building I was involved in that fire.
That was the 67?
I mean, just the cleanup, not the pre.
Okay.
Yeah.
76 was the second fire, right?
See? And I had my burden in '65, so I could go back into some of the areas after that.
Oh, really? 65 you had your burden.
But see, I was in a suit, protected. All I was getting was radiation from the external source, not the internal.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
I understand it was very dark in those.
It was dark, dark, yes.
What did it look like in those rooms?
I don't know. You really didn't pay much attention. You went out there and did your job. If my job was to sit on my duff all day, I did it. If my job was to do this dirty work, cleaning up, I did it. See, at that time, I was an experimental operator when I did that.
So what was an experimental operator? What were you doing then?
Mostly the cleanup.
Oh.
Yeah.
So you just sort of did what they needed you.
Then I.
Okay. I think that's about it for my questions. I have one. Wondering. Sounds like around the same time they let a lot of women in the plants. They started hiring more minorities, and I'm wondering if there were any issues that you witnessed around that as a foreman, or if there are people who weren't happy working.
Oh, well, yeah. We had minorities working for us. Women, a couple women. Mm-hmm. Some of the women were in the office type things. Some were operators, process operators that worked in them. Mm-hmm. And they did the same job as the men. You got the same pay. And I didn't see any problem with them. Mm-hmm. We had women working the production. Some of them, I took aside and studied some of them that were janitors, and they used to come in and ask me to help them with the testing for the progression program, and I would help them with that so they'd get in the program and learn a little bit of the system, and And they'd come back and thank me for telling me that the help I gave them on it, which was probably either good or bad, I don't know which, but they got the jobs.
And so you didn't see among the people who worked for you any resistance when women minorities came into the came onto the lines?
Yeah, the minorities, they came in. I didn't see any problem. We had some minorities working with us, and the only thing I seen, one was real short, and she was a woman, and she couldn't reach the glove boxes, so we had to build platforms for her to stand on so she could get in. That was maybe one of the, but because of her size, she was small. But she did a good job. Yeah, once we got her something to stand on.
Okay, and I guess just one big wrap-up question: what was it, having been in there so early, having been one of the first people to work at Rocky Flats? What was it like to see it grow from this little operation to this enormous place?
Oh, I think it was better at the start. Small plant. The people were all like me. Most of them had never seen it, never heard of it. And the bosses were good, very good instructors. We had good instructors teaching us how to do the job. And as you went through the plant, it got big. And I think you lost this feeling that you was family. You was part of the family. When Dow left, it didn't feel like you was part of the family. You felt like you was just a workforce. You come out there just to do your job, and you didn't feel comfortable as you did. You felt more comfortable with smaller population. The bigger the population got, I imagine you got more people. But we did the job. That's what we was out there for. We did the job. We won the Cold War. We produced the parts, and we made the things that had, and I think we did it very safe. I really do. That's my opinion. That's all I can give.
Anything else that we've missed? Any stories or things you'd like to add?
Oh, I don't know. I mentioned the roadways were bad. The cows up against it. And a lot of people come into the plant site I met, and they furnished everything you had, your shoes, your safety glasses, everything you wore, they furnished everything. They give you physicals every year, flu shots, medication to get you through the day if you wanted it, needed it, and things like that. It was a very good place, at least in my opinion. Like I said, I didn't stay 37 years because I didn't like the place. I did like it. The last year, I did not like it. I did not like what I was doing the last year. That was not my job, and I knew it, and I retired.
All right, well, thank you very much for participating.
All right.
Appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Okay.